Hey, friends, welcome back to the Invigorate Your Journey podcast. Today's episode, we are specifically creating for those people who have recently been diagnosed with lupus or another autoimmune disease. Unfortunately, these diseases are dramatically rising, and we're meeting more and more people who have been recently diagnosed. The good news is Chris and I have had maybe almost 30 years of experience dealing with lupus and all things autoimmune disease. Today, Chris and I are going to discuss questions from people who have recently been diagnosed and are just trying to figure all this out. So, Chris, we already said brief hellos, but hi and welcome. Thank you for being here.
I always enjoy to be here with you, Karen. I'm really excited to address these questions and really see how we can, like when you said the 30 years of experience, I'm like, goodness, yeah, that's right. We are vets in this game, aren't we? Like this, that's a lot of time of living with lupus and being a part of the autoimmune disease community, but definitely happy to help.
Well, it was kind of funny as I was looking through the questions. One of them specifically calls out, because you guys have been living with these diseases for so long. So I didn't take offense, but it did give me pause. I was like, yeah, between the two of us, it really has been a long time.
That's right. Yeah. So no, I think if anything else, it is a feather in our cap, like a sign of something to be joyful about, the fact that we lived with this for so long and we're still here to be able to help people. It's a blessing, you know?
Absolutely. But even though it has been so long, I so vividly remember when I was first diagnosed. And I'm sure you feel that way too.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't know how many other things we'll forget in our lives, but this particular episode of being diagnosed, like those months and like highlights of those months, those like really key moments, I think they'll be with us for the rest of our lives. I can't imagine, all things being well mentally, I can't imagine us ever forgetting those aspects of our lives. You know?
Mm-hmm. There was a lot of mixed emotions that came with that diagnosis. Yeah, the relief on one side, like, okay, we know what this is. I'm not dying immediately, not to like go dark so soon.
Because it might sound weird to people. It probably sounds weird to people when we say relief, but that really is one of the first things, you know, you and I felt independent. We didn't even know each other back when we were diagnosed, but we both independently felt this great relief of at least we know what it is, and I don't have a few weeks left to live or a few months left to live. Like, you know, there's a plan that is being laid out. That was a, you know,
and having that game plan, it's like, okay, now we can start moving towards healing and managing this.
Right.
That was like such a game changer for me.
Absolutely. Me too.
You have the relief, but then you also have the overwhelm and the angst of this being indefinitely and just the flat out unknown, which I think we'll get into with a lot of these questions.
And definitely, I think information is power, you know, and allow people to know as much as they can know helps pave the road for.
Yeah, so even if like some of these questions aren't directly related to you, I would just keep an open mind, because a lot of the themes carry throughout in navigating each of these diseases.
That's right. Makes sense.
All right, so let's dive into them. The first question is, I just got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease 2 weeks ago. First, sorry to hear that. A referral's been sent to my rheumatologist, but they said it may take a few months for an appointment, which is common, as we know. Sometimes it can take months to get in to see these specialists. Yeah, this person goes on to say, as for my pain, bones, and my joints hurt so bad, especially my spine. Ouch. My My feet tingle, my arms are constantly falling asleep, and I'm having a hard time sleeping or doing much of anything without my body aching and have horrible headaches. Is there anything I can take or do until I can get into the doctor?
This is such a powerful question and such a common situation because, just looking at that, I'm seeing like the way inflammation is a part of this journey with the feet tingle. Sometimes I don't think we talk enough, at least within the autoimmune community, about how there is neuropathy outside of like diabetes. I think for folks who know the term neuropathy, which is being experienced by this person when they talk about tingling of the feet, we sometimes associate that only with diabetes, right? But there are other autoimmune diseases. In this case, it's talking about we don't know the exact diagnosis, but knowing that the neuropathy that you're experiencing is not an uncommon effect of these things. And I think what's tough with all of these things happening in concert is that it's not as if the normal remedies that we take when we didn't have these conditions. So for example, I can't tell you, oh, just like ice your feet or soak your feet and like warm them up. And they use Epsom salt because I've experienced it personally where I've done that and it made it hurt worse. I've experienced, unfortunately, taking pain relievers that were too harsh for my body and ended up making things worse. So it really is difficult in terms of saying, oh, this is going to be the one thing that will help relieve all of it. But I do think as best as you can, adjusting your schedule if you're able to do that. If this is something where you're unable to work, really talking whether it's with the HR person or whoever it is to see if I cannot get it's like, will this apply with like FEMLA or like, family medical leave? I cannot take a particular season of time to say I need to like stop working altogether because trying to work through it as you're really trying to figure out everything that's going on with your body, and my experience is really exacerbating things and made things so much worse. So I'm really sorry I don't have a silver bullet like that one here that can solve all of these things, but it's really about seeing what ways can you sort of like trim the areas of stress, trim the areas of, frankly, responsibility in this time. Everyone's situation is unique, but perhaps there are some things in your life that you're doing right now that you can at least hand it off to someone else, at least temporarily, until you're able to get a real game plan for your diet.
Something that's very important that you mentioned is that with all of this, there's typically not a silver bullet, nor is there one answer for everyone. So being able to lean in and be open to different solutions is, I think, a key piece of this. It just sounds like you can't focus on anything but what's happening. I have very much been there where it's just an effort to be vertical. That's such a hard phase to be in. Reminder that it is temporary. We'll get through it. The more you can do to carve out space for yourself and care for yourself, that's got to be number one right now.
And I know for some folks that sounds impossible, but it's, if you view it as like, I can't let these things drop, it's like, if you have that mentality, they're going to drop because you're not going to be able to take care of yourself to hold those things up. And I say that as someone who has had a lot of responsibilities while diagnosed and did not see a path forward where I wasn't carrying all those things. If you try to just like, frankly, be stubborn and say, I have to do this, you're not going to be able to do those things well because you're in this new frontier you've never felt the same before. You don't know yet how to manage it. So trying to act as if everything's normal, carrying the same things you carried when you were fully healthy, this is not a good recipe. It's a recipe for disaster.
And it's not to say you won't be able to do those things in the future. It just right now, it shouldn't be a priority.
Yeah. Temporary is the word of the day. Like, it's not, because I never imagined that, and maybe you feel the same way, Karen, I never imagined that we would be able to do all the things that we're doing now. When I first was diagnosed, like at the worst of it. And there's still days that are tough, but we learn to adjust, we ebb and flow, and try to as best we can, our lives in ways that allow us to have that particular flexibility. But I never imagined that we'd be able to do all the things that we're doing now. This many years into the journey, I really, the lowest points feared I wouldn't be able to do anything at all. So being able to do what I'm doing now, yes, it looks different than where I was when I was first diagnosed, but it's still something very fulfilling. And I think that's really the key, is learning how to adjust and knowing how to think that temporarily, picking up something new later on.
And while it looks different, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm so grateful it looks so different for me.
Yeah, me too. Agreed.
Okay, let's go into the next one. I'm so sick of saying I don't feel good. Every time I have to explain to my family that I can't do something or that I need help. How do you let people know without having to explain every single time? How do others go about this?
This really depends on so much more than yourself, because, if, let's say, just in our dynamic, if I were to tell you, Karen, I don't feel well today, it's not only me working up the courage to be like, hey, I'm not going to tell you something else. Like, this is the reason why. But it also requires you to have the patience, the compassion, and the understanding to say, like, okay, I understand. Ooh, this might have been the third time in the month. Is Chris okay? These are the ways that we have interaction. I know for a fact there's a window of having to educate your friends and family on, just the way that this thing works, that you're not trying to be a flaky person. You're not trying to like mess up their plans at the last minute. But it really can be something where at 10 a.m. you feel great, and at 6 p.m. you just made your bed. That's a real thing. So you, of course, and I don't know if it ever really stops. You'll have people who say, well, you look great. And you have people who will sort of look at whatever the external picture is and assume like that's what the internal picture is. But it really depends on a willingness of the people around you in your life and in your circle to be educated about it. And so, if you say, oh, what's going on? Like, why do you need help, or why can't you come to the restaurant? It's like, well, yeah, another one, and maybe that one you can build it to a point where like you don't even have to go into full detail, because I know like all too well how exhausting it can be to always feel like you're justified trying to explain it. Sometimes you prepare this like long essay you do yourself of like, and this happened, but it doesn't take all of that with people who are doing the work on their own end of making sure that they have an understanding, making sure they build up the compassion and the patience, because those times when you're on, you're still on, but those times that you don't have it, it doesn't serve anyone well to you to push through that and hurt yourself.
They found that if I gave a little more context, then it was perceived or received a little bit more positively than if I'm just not feeling well again today.
I think that's true. I think that's really true. But even that is person to person, right? Because you have some folks who, don't want to learn more about what lupus is doing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think that unfortunately you have people who, you could do a whole seminar about how lupus affects the body, and all they will see is like, so you're telling me you can't come to the amusement park with me? Like, that's all they're gonna hear. And I think it's really, at some point in the journey, we have to stop as lupus warriors, as people who have these autoimmune diseases or disorders. We have to stop feeling bad about what we're experiencing. Like, this is not a sign of like a moral flaw or some sort of like, a bad case of character because we're not able to be committed to everything. Like, if anything, I feel like many of the folks I've met in this community are overcommitted and are doing a ton of things. And so it makes sense for them to be exhausted even if they weren't living with this condition. And so at some point, in order to make sure that we're ensuring our thriving, we have to be okay with, a little disappointment being in the mix. We can't say yes to everything. We can't be at everything. We have to become a little more selective with where we are and when we are in these spaces. And even if saying, oh, we're going to go to that thing on Friday at 7, maybe ensure that we're resting throughout the week so that we can prepare ourselves for that time Friday at 7, rather than stacking our schedule in such a way that by the time we get to Friday at 7, we have no more spoons left. I think we just have to be very protective of our time and our resources and our energy.
And I think that's important because even me just talking about how to communicate and educate with others, I still struggle with it now, but especially in my 20s, I was such a people pleaser. So it's like I was always like trying to make everyone else feel comfortable and like understand because, and then you also mentioned just that you can have that like, I don't know if it's shame or guilt, but you just like frustration that you have this disease and you feel like you can't be living a normal life.
That's right. That's right. And you feel, I know I felt this in my 20s. Like, I felt like I was in, I don't know why Mario Kart came to mind, but I was just going to say a race, but it felt like I'm watching everyone just zip past me. And it felt so frustrating to have, ambition and drive and tenacity, but the engine just wasn't working. Like I knew that in order for me to be a great writer, I needed to, in my mind, like wake up early and read and then write. But like it'd be so much of a struggle, so much of a fight to get out of bed in the morning. And I couldn't muster the energy to make sure that I was working out. So I didn't have the energy to do everything I needed to do. So I felt guilty when I was reading. And all these things like compounding. And at some point, frankly, we just have to love ourselves enough to say, like, this is the state we're in. And until, change, we have to learn how to live in these circumstances.
That's one thing that you've really reinforced with me, and I'm so appreciative of, is this is the situation, and we have to live within the skin that we're in. And there shouldn't be any like negative feelings around.
Right. I heard people say things like, comparison is the thief of joy, right? So if I'm so stuck looking at, oh man, I could be like them, or I could be like this, or even saying, I wish I was who I was 10 years ago. All of those things are setups for disaster because we don't have a time machine. We can't be that other person. We are who we are, and we have to learn how to deal with the circumstances we have. We have to have the sort of resilience that says we don't only want to survive, we want to thrive.
I've seen a lot on social media within the autoimmune space. I want my old life back. We're always evolving and changing, so it's not old versus new.
Yeah, I mean, I think about, I think it was Jay-Z who said, you miss the old Jay, like, listen to my old albums. Like, I can't be I can't be frozen in time. I can't be static. I can't be this person just to be consumed at whatever zenith you perceive I had. Like, I'm going to continue to evolve. And there's so much about our journey where, like, yes, we may be older, but there's also more wisdom that has come with our experiences. There's also certain dexterity that's formed because we know how to move through circumstances that used to be an obstacle for us before, but now we view them as opportunities. I think there's so many reasons to love yourself and appreciate who you're becoming every single day, rather than just living stuck in the past and nostalgic to the point of sickness where we can't appreciate anything moving forward. We just are on this sort of slow march toward the end. I don't subscribe to that. I think we need to remain appreciative and grateful and hopeful about what's coming next, even if it means some of the things we used to do are changing. I'm certain that there are new things we're adding if we're desirous of adding.
That's really important, but probably one of the hardest things to remember when you are in a season where the littlest accomplishments are extremely difficult based on your symptoms. Knowing that we are constantly changing and evolving, that's exciting because new opportunities will come with this. So you gotta be open to it.
Absolutely.
Before we go into the next question, Chris, I want to ask, who was your character in Mario Kart?
Yoshi, all day. Yoshi was like that. Or I
Me
don't know
too.
Yoshi's gender. Yoshi was them. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Love Yoshi.
Love that game. Good times.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Okay, we'll try and get through a couple more questions. I think we will have to do a part 2 of this to get through a few more.
I'm up for it too.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so between brain fog and fatigue, I have trouble holding down a conversation. How do you deal with this? Chris, have you
Oh my
experienced
gosh.
brain fog?
It is the worst, Karen. It is the
Yeah.
absolute worst. It's really, I mean, I love the description because it's perfect in the sense of I know I was going to say something to you. I think it was going to be great. I was really excited to say something to you, and I have no idea what it is now. You know what I mean? Like that feeling is just
Yeah.
so terrible. It's mainly hit me like interpersonal conversation. I'm so grateful it hasn't been like mid sermon or like mid poem
Oh,
or mid rap or something like a performance of some sort where I'm just going and I'm just like, oh, when's the next slide? I'm so glad that hasn't happened to me because that'd be so scary.
yeah.
But just like mid conversation, and for me, where I've really gone with it is I've tried to just. I'm gonna say a lot about acceptance today, and I've really just tried to accept that it will come back. And sometimes that has been true. Sometimes I'm like, oh yes, and I'll text that person, see what I was trying to say. I have found myself, especially as a writer, or and I'm writing in a given week a sermon, an essay, a poem, a part of a short story I'm working on. If I get a really good line, I have to write it immediately. There's even been some times where 2 a.m., 3 a.m., I'll have a line that comes to my mind, and I'll just say to my wife, because she often has her phone next to her, and I'll say, hey, can you text me this? And it's so dope in that, like, she'll just say, okay, I got you. Just write down word for word what I said. So that way, in the morning or whenever I get to it, I can get to it. So it's really not trying to lead into the frustration because it feels terrible to not be able to hold on to what you were going to say, but just learning how to use different tools so that you can kind of like sketch out, oh, this is what I want to do. Or even if I'm having like an online meeting, I'll start using AI to record the notes for me because I found that when I'm like writing the notes by hand and they're asking me a question, I can kind of like forget what I was going to say next to them. But if I have something I know I can trust is handling all of the note taking, I can be as present as possible to make sure I'm able to give you the response I need. So just really understanding we need equipment and a trusting community to help us cope and deal with brain fog. But it's all fun.
Those tools are critical. I can't function without a pen and paper.
So real.
As far as fatigue mentioned earlier, is carving out space for yourself to make sure that even if you're not sleeping, you're getting as much rest that you can during this time. There's not a great answer for brain fog or fatigue. It's just one of those things that I feel like your body needs to work through.
That's it. That's really it. It's really, I think fatigue especially, you just have to sort of like learn how to dance with it, right? Like there's certain things. Like for example, I think it's probably like medically better for you to like work out first thing in the morning. But I found myself taking too long to recover, especially if I was lifting. And so now I lift and just go to sleep and just go to bed and let my body do all the recovery work that it's gonna do when I'm sleeping anyway. Let it do its work and just allow don't fight against particular rhythms, and really, I know it's not easy for everyone to do, but as best as you can, try to incorporate some flexibility into your life because I really think when we're able to have a more flexible schedule with work and family and community and other obligations, it just helps rather than something where you have to be in the same place every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Where there's going to be some Tuesdays where you're great and some Tuesdays where you feel terrible. Allow as best as you can. This is different for everyone. As best as you can, a more flexible schedule that will allow you to be your best and rest when you need to rest.
I think that's even more important in the early stages as you get more familiar with your body and living with some of the challenges that come along with these diseases.
Agreed.
Okay, let's do one more. We can do second episode answering some more questions that we didn't get through.
Love it.
So as an SLE patient, which is someone with lupus, is there anything that makes you feel empowered when dealing with doctors?
Yeah, I have found that when I have clearly done my homework, which means I'm looking at my labs, because I don't think and if there are any doctors watching the show, please feel free to correct me in the comments. I don't think doctors enjoy too much when we try to sound like we are authorities in the room too. They had this all this med school training, and I'm like, well, I saw a YouTube video once. Like, I don't think they enjoy that too much. But I do try to do my homework with the labs so I can ask really informed questions, right? So it's not just I feel good or I feel bad or this hurts or that can be better. Really, I think I've been paying attention to, the amount of like potassium I have, my iron, like how does this lend itself, to like, my kidney function? How does this lend itself, to, my overall oxygen levels or whatever the case may be? Like just asking really informed questions that come from you observing your labs, asking about informed questions about like how long you have to be on your medicines, asking important questions about the alternatives to particular medicines. And I think once you do that, then you can be really, you'll establish a trust with your doctor that allows you to say, like, hey, like, I don't like how my body feels when I take this medicine, or like I'm scared of needles. Like, what can I do about my infusions? Cause I'm scared of needles. Like, I think then you're able to be a bit more vulnerable about things like that. Doing the homework in my situation has allowed me to build a rapport and a trust with the doctors that allows me to be more vulnerable as well.
And building that rapport, being engaged in understanding your labs, it just gives you a few more tools to be able to talk with your doctor about the treatment plan.
Sure. Yeah, and just really allowing yourself to be a part of a team. Sometimes we go into it, and for very legitimate reasons, we go into our appointments with a lot of anxiety, a lot of defensiveness, but really understanding that there is an opportunity to teamwork is something that has allowed my patient-doctor relationships to thrive. So I think there's room for fire.
The common question that Chris and I get is, what do I do if I'm not comfortable with my doctor or I'm not feeling like they truly get me? We often encourage people to keep looking and try doctors until you find someone that really works with you.
Sure. Yeah, because I would imagine it's more stressful to have a doctor that you don't trust or the relationship's not working. I think that's more stress, which is the last thing you need. So please, do your homework on trying to find the best doctor patient relationships to you. Like I think there's nothing wrong with that. So that's complete fault, Karin.
Okay, Chris, we will wrap this up. Thank you as always.
Of course, man. It's always a joy to be with y'all. Yeah.
We will do a second episode answering more questions, but feel free to continue to DM message us any way you want to get a hold of us, and we'll be sure to answer your questions either on the show or respond direct messages. So don't be shy, reach out, and please like and share so we can reach others who are recently diagnosed and on their health journeys with autoimmune diseases. So thank you, and take
care.